In this video, we're going to go through how to actually create an application inside of Xcode. So I've got Xcode open here, and the first thing we're going to do is tell it to create a new project. So we're going to select Create New Project. And from that point, we're going to start building an iOS application. So we're going to select iOS application. I'm going to do a single view application, and we're just going to select the next option here. At this point, we're going to give it a name. I'm just going to say Test App 2. The company identifier is really a way to keep all of your applications grouped by your company. Basically, so when you're uploading to the store or anything like that, every application's got a unique identifier that goes along with it. Our class identifier, I'm not going to get into all of this stuff. We've got a class prefix that we're going to use, and it usually defaults it to test view here. And then we've got that this is going to be for an iPhone, but we also have the ability to select a universal or iPad specific. Whether we're going to use storyboards, and storyboards are actually the way that the Xcode keeps all of the different user interface elements grouped together, and it kind of chains everything together. You're going to be seeing that stuff when we're going through this, but you want to use the storyboards. And then the automatic reference counting is a little bit complicated if you don't know how to program and you don't know what pointers are and how to deal with memory. But in iOS 5, I think Apple added the ability to have Xcode actually go through, or Objective C, actually go through and deal with its own reference counting so that it automatically frees memory instead of you constantly having to keep track of all of the different elements that are getting created and deal with the, when to free things on your own. So we want to use the new iOS 5 and greater automatic reference counting. So we're just going to go ahead and select Next. And at this point, we're going to give the application a folder to put itself in. So I'm just going to create a new folder here, and we're just going to call it Test App 2. And then we'll tell it to create the application and create. Now, Xcode, once it gets started here, you're going to get put on the application itself so that you can set different things. Like, do you want the application to run? Right now we've got it set to run portrait, landscape, and landscape right, left and right, but not upside down. We can turn things on and off. So the dark gray basically is on and the light gray is off. So if I don't want it to do landscape left, I can just click it and turn it off. We've got our main storyboard that we're going to use, and you can have more than one storyboard in your application. Most of the time you're probably just going to have one. And then you've got different things, and again, I'm not going to get into all of the different pieces of this. We're just going to basically show how to create an application. We've also got application icons and launch images. The application icons, by default on the old style phones and iPads, they're 57 by 57. And then it's basically 114 by 114 for the Retina display images. And you're generally recommended to actually have an icon for both of these. The reason is because if you don't put a Retina display image in here, it'll actually take the 57 by 57 and blow it up twice as big to show on the Retina display, which basically looks like crap. So you probably want to expand the thing on your own and make it look like you want. Now, the launch images are an interesting concept, but basically when the user starts your application, it's going to take a couple seconds to get everything loaded and ready to run. And by setting a launch image in here, the system can actually go in and display that launch image immediately. Maybe it's a login screen, so it can bring the login screen up immediately, even though it's not actually ready to take input from the user. And instead of the user seeing the application sitting there waiting, they click in the login field, for example, that actually is just an image of the login screen, by the time they get to that position, hopefully your application will have loaded, and they won't really realize that they weren't looking at your application's login page. They were looking at an image. So it's just a way to kind of trick the user into thinking that things are loading faster than they really are. Now, just to explain a few things while we're here, we have over here on the test app 2 that we created, we've got our project that we created up here. We've got our main storyboard, which is this section here. This is where you're going to put your visual aspects, anything visual, buttons, text fields, multiple forms, where we're going to go from one form to another. And we're going to be doing this in this series of videos. This video is only showing you how to actually create the project, which technically we've already done. Our application delegates that we have here are you can kind of think of a delegate as something that is going to happen in certain events. So like the form loading or the application loading or a grid cell being clicked or whatever, the delegates are where the actions are taking place. And then we have the controller, which basically sits between your source code and the visual aspect. So you've got the controller is what communicates between the code and the visual aspect of the user. So it's kind of like a three-layered piece. We have our GUI part of the application, and then the GUI talks to the controller. So we have our controller, and then the controller talks to our actual code. And so if the code wants to display something in the GUI, the code would actually tell the controller, hey, I'd like for you to do something over here on this particular text field, and then the text field goes over and communicates with, or the controller goes over and communicates with that actual text field. So that's basically the concept between a controller. And then again, your storyboard is the actual part of the storyboard, or your visual. Now, in the supporting files, if you've watched any of the intro to programming videos, you'll notice that I had mentioned in there that most all compiled applications are all going to have a main section. Well, inside of the supporting files, we have our main file, main.m, and this function here is what actually gets called when this application loads. Now, Objective C is kind of a strange language to me. It actually has the ability to run C. So technically it is a C application, and you'll notice this looks exactly like a C main declaration. We're returning an int value. The function name is main, and we have an integer argument C and a character pointer array that is argv. And then this code down here actually looks like a C function as well. Now you're going to notice that once we get into the actual Objective C, it doesn't look like this at all. It is actually a very strange environment that we are going to find ourselves in here shortly. And in fact, this little piece of code right here is the beginning of that strangeness, and it'll start to hopefully make sense as we go through this. But all this is doing is it's setting up our auto release pool, which is something that we turned on when we told it that we wanted it to auto release our memory counting. And then it returns, we've got a UI application function that it is going to call. It's passing it a few parameters, and then this is actually this piece of code here is actually an Objective C function. And again, we're going to get into more of this stuff as we go through this. But that's our main function. As we progress in the videos that are coming up, we're going to get into actually adding buttons to the forms and showing how to actually wire everything up so that we're communicating. But the primary thing that I wanted to go through in this particular video was, how to actually create the application and some of the different aspects that are created here for you automatically when you do that. And then in the next video, I'm going to kind of dive in a little bit more on the app delegates and the view controller, so you can kind of see what's involved and what's in those files.